right, so today we're doing a deep dive on Lamin Sanneh's Translating the Message.
Okay.
And we're going to be looking at how something like as straightforward as just translating the Bible actually had this huge impact on, well, everything.
Yeah.
Christianity spreading all over the world, different cultures evolving.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah. Sanneh, he doesn't hold back. Like, he really comes out and says that Christianity, it's not like other religions that are tied to one specific place.
Right.
You know?
Like Islam being tied to Mecca.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
like,
exactly.
its growth is really all about translating the Bible.
So the message was meant to travel.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And it was meant to kind of take root in all these new places.
So how did that work?
Well, it really all starts with language. So Christianity, it became a faith that was rooted in all these different communities around the world because they embraced this idea of translating the Bible into local languages.
So not imposing like one sacred language.
Right.
But making it make sense to people.
Exactly.
In their own language.
And you know, the really fascinating thing here is that for a lot of these cultures, this was about way more than just religion.
Okay.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
This was often the first time that anyone had bothered to write down their language.
Wow.
Missionaries, they were often the ones who were like, okay, we need to figure out how to make this make sense to these people.
Yeah.
So they were writing down these languages for the very first time.
So learning to read for a lot of communities wasn't just about like religious devotion. It was their first tastes of knowledge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And Sanneh, he argues that this is actually what unintentionally sparked like literacy and cultural awareness.
Wow.
And it even fed into national identity movements later on.
It wasn't always easy though, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It was, you know, translating something as complex as the Bible, all these different cultures, there were bound to be hiccups along the way.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Sanneh, he calls this the clash of worldviews, right? Where they were translating the Bible.
Okay.
And it forced this confrontation between like traditional Western thought and these local beliefs. And it really challenged everyone involved to kind of rethink what they thought to be true.
Right, right.
Like, take the Chulce people in Mexico, for example. They heard the story of John the Baptist's beheading.
Okay.
Which, you know, for Christians is this moment of solemn grief.
Yeah.
And they laughed.
Oh, no.
And at first...
That's awful.
It's like, oh...
Yeah, but I'm sure there's more to this story.
There is, because for the Chulce, laughter, that's how they express deep sorrow and grief.
Oh, wow.
So it was this huge lesson for the missionaries.
Wow.
You know, that this wasn't about one culture being right or wrong.
Yeah.
It was about completely different ways of seeing the world.
And different ways of experiencing the world, too.
Exactly. And sometimes those different ways of seeing the world, those translation choices, they had really real-world consequences.
Yeah.
So in West Africa, for example, the word save, it was translated as free. Yeah. Which led a lot of people to believe that converting to Christianity meant that you didn't have to pay taxes.
Oh, wow.
Or do forced labor.
That's taking it literally.
Right. Yeah. So, you know.
So how did missionaries deal with all this? They couldn't have just thrown their hands up and been like, this is too hard.
Right. They had to become really, really careful, really deliberate about how they approached this whole translation process.
Right.
So Sanneh, he talks about this big debate that they had over which Zulu word to use for God.
Okay. Yeah.
And it took a long time, but they finally landed on this term, Nkulunkulu.
Okay.
Which had deep roots in the Zulu understanding of kind of a divine being.
So it was really a two-way street?
Exactly.
A conversation and not a lecture.
Exactly. And that's one of Sanneh's key takeaways is that, yes, missionaries, they were going out and they were trying to spread Christianity, but they also ended up giving these communities the tools to express their own faith in their own words, even if it wasn't always intentional, you know?
Yeah.
It's just this really fascinating kind of unintended consequence.
Right. Like giving someone a voice, you know?
Exactly. And Sanneh, he doesn't stop there. He argues that this act, this giving communities the Bible in their own language, it had these ripple effects that went way beyond just, you know, converting people to Christianity.
Okay.
He even draws this parallel to how Islam spread, which was totally different.
Right, because they emphasized the Quran in the original Arabic.
Exactly.
Which kept that strong connection to where it all started.
Yes. Yeah.
So you have these two major religions, two very different approaches to spreading their message.
Right.
And both successful.
Exactly.
In their own way.
Yeah, and it just makes you think, like, is it better to stick to your core principles, you know?
Right.
Hold on to that original language, that original tradition?
Yeah.
Or is it more effective to adapt?
Right.
To evolve, make the message fit in with all these different cultures?
That's a tough one. There's no easy answer to that.
Right.
No. But sticking with Sanneh for now,
yeah,
he talks about some pretty mind-blowing examples of how this whole translation movement had a lasting impact.
Oh, absolutely. He talks about how it even played a role in African independence movements.
Wow, really?
Yeah, remember those tools for self-expression we were talking about?
Yeah.
They gave local communities this power
right.
to challenge colonial rule
okay.
in ways that they never could have before.
So something that started with translating religious texts.
Yes.
Ended up having this huge political impact.
Huge impact.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's really a testament to the power of language, you know? Mm-hmm. And even the Catholic Church, who for centuries, they held on to Latin as their official language.
Yeah, Latin in the Catholic Church, it was like...
synonymous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sanneh talks about how Vatican II, that was a turning point.
Absolutely, yeah. They finally embraced this idea of letting people experience their faith in their own language.
It was a huge shift.
Huge shift.
For them, yeah.
And I think it just speaks to this broader idea that, you know, connecting with something deeply, whether it's faith or culture or whatever,
right.
It's personal.
Yeah.
And language is that key.
It's that bridge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Unlocks that connection.
Okay. I gotta say, this whole story, it's mind-blowing. You have this movement to translate the Bible, right?
Right.
The intention is to spread this one specific religion.
Yeah.
But it had all these unintended consequences. It shaped cultures, languages, even politics in ways that nobody could have predicted.
Nobody saw it coming.
So, like, beyond the historical context,
right.
What does this all mean for us now?
That is the million-dollar question, right?
Okay.
Like, what Sanneh is really getting at here is the very core of how cultures interact.
Okay.
He's saying that to really understand another culture,
yeah.
It takes more than just, you know, these surface-level interactions. You have to dive deep into their language.
Right.
Their worldview.
So not just knowing the right words.
Right.
But understanding...
the music behind the words.
Yes.
You know, the context.
Yeah, okay. Exactly.
It's about challenging our own assumptions.
Right.
Being open to seeing the world through a different lens.
Okay.
And, like, think about that story Sanneh tells about the pilgrims in Ghana who purify airplanes with ritual water before they fly to Mecca.
Okay, that seems a little out of left field, but I'm sure you're going to bring it back around.
It's all about bridging that gap.
Okay.
Between tradition and the modern world.
Okay.
These pilgrims, they aren't rejecting technology.
Okay.
They're finding a way to make it fit into their worldview.
Right.
You know, it's not that different from Dr. Livingstone trying to debunk the rainmakers with science.
Okay.
It's just a different perspective.
It's two totally different cultures, different times.
Right.
But they're both dealing with this idea
totally
of how to understand this new and unfamiliar thing.
Exactly, and how to make sense of it.
Yeah. And it's not about one side being right or wrong.
No.
It's about finding a way for these two things to coexist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it all, right? It's these bridges between cultures. They're often built through language, through translation.
Right.
And most importantly, I think, this genuine desire to understand, not just to be understood.
Yeah, like walk a mile in someone else's shoes.
Yes.
But it's speak their language.
Yes.
Even if just for a little while.
Exactly. And, you know, Sanneh, he leaves us with this final thought to chew on.
Okay.
He says that part of why Christianity became so global is because they embraced translation.
Right.
So we got to ask ourselves, as our world just becomes more and more interconnected, what's the best way for any idea to spread?
So is it better to keep that original language pure, like Islam did with the Quran? Or do you try to adapt and meet people halfway? Yes. Linguistically speaking, I mean.
It's a huge question. And not just for religion either. Think about how ideas spread in general. Political movements, social trends, all that.
Right.
Do those ideas work better if they stay in their original form? Or should they change to fit the culture?
I don't even know if there's a right answer to that.
Probably depends, right? On the idea and the situation. Sanneh doesn't pretend to know it all, but he does bring up a good example with the Niger mission.
Okay.
African missionaries, guys like Samuel Ajayi Crowther, they were all about using local languages. Really understood letting people experience Christianity in their mother tongue.
Seems kind of obvious, but I'm guessing it wasn't so simple.
Not exactly. Trowther and those guys, they got pushback. Mostly from European missionary groups, actually.
Really?
Yeah, shows that tension, between wanting to spread the religion, but also wanting to control how it spreads.
We want you to have this,
right,
but on our terms.
Exactly. Classic, right. Happens all the time in history. And language gets caught right in the middle of that power struggle.
Yeah.
Who decides how the message comes across? Whose interpretation matters more? Big, big questions.
And Sanneh's point is that these weren't just like theological debates happening in some bubble somewhere. This was all tangled up with African independence movements, too.
Exactly. When people got the tools to express themselves in their own language, it snowballed. It let them challenge the whole colonial system.
Wow.
Not just in church either, but in every part of life. Suddenly, language wasn't just talking. It was about taking back your identity. Having a voice on the world stage.
So much power in that. It's kind of humbling, Just translating something could spark that much change.
It really is. And it brings us back to that final thought from Sanneh, that comparison he makes. Christianity versus Islam. One embraced translation, spread all over, adapted to different cultures. The other stuck with the original Arabic of the Quran, and, well, it had its own massive impact going that route.
Two different paths, both shaping the world. A lot to think about. But I guess the point is, there's no magic formula for spreading an idea, huh?
Nope, no easy answers. What Sanneh does is give us a way to think about it. About how important language is, how it shapes what we believe, how we see the world, how we connect with each other. Especially now, when the world's so connected.
It's like he's pushing us to look past just the words themselves.
Yeah.
Think about the culture, the history, the power dynamics, all that. That human need to understand each other.
And be understood.
Right.
Couldn't have put it better myself. And on that note, I'd say we've done a pretty deep dive into translating the message, wouldn't you?
We really have. And it wasn't just about religion. It was about how language, well, it really can reshape the world, huh?
Absolutely can.
It's amazing. Hopefully our listeners are walking away with a whole new view on how important this stuff is. Language, understanding other cultures, Who knew translating the Bible could be so relevant to us today?
Right. Sometimes the most profound things, they come from where you least expect them. So keep asking questions, keep exploring new stuff, and most importantly, keep talking to each other.
I love that. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, everyone, keep those minds curious and never stop exploring.